Hello everyone, it's Benny, and today I'm going to be showing you a very simple Redstone game that's been programmed into a Redstone computer. So this game is a lot like roulette. You get to pick some number, any number that you want, and then the computer will generate some number. And if the number you pick happens to be the same as the number the computer generates, then you will get a reward. But if not, then the floor will come out from under you and you will fall into this deep, dark pit of doom. So, let me show you how this works. Here's the way that you play the game. You have two panels. The first panel is your sort of control panel. As you can see, there's two options. You can either get the computer to generate some random number, or you can input some number into the computer. And the other, of course, is your input panel, where you can put any number that you want. So, it's simple enough in that respect. So, if you want to use this effectively, though, here's how you'll want to do it. First off, you want to load the program, and you'll know it's been loaded by the general indicator turning on. And then you'll want to input whichever option you're going to do. And in this case, I want to generate a completely new random number. Now, anytime you generate a random number, you'll need to put in some number as the seed. And if you choose not to put in the seed, the computer is smart and will pick up on that and say, hey, no, you need to put in the seed. So, it'll essentially just, if you try turning it on right now, then the computer would just keep going on forever, waiting for you to put in some seed. And as soon as you put in some seed, it would continue and generate some random number. So for my seed, I'm going to put in lucky number 13. Just because why not? So I'm putting in 13 as my seed, and now when I turn the computer on, it will begin generating some random number. And the way I'll know the computer is generating is it will start flashing the general indicator on and off. And when the general indicator becomes solid and stays solid, then I'll know the computer is finished generating a random number. And technically speaking, it's not really a random number. It's actually something called a hash, because if you put in the same seed, you'll always get the same random number. So in a sense, this game does take some skill to play, because you could just try and figure out whatever algorithm the computer is using to generate a random number, and then if you do, then you can know exactly what the number is every time. So there's a little bit of skill involved if you choose, but for the most part, you're just picking a random number. And the computer has finished generating a random number, so now we can begin playing. So I get to put in my guess for whatever number the computer generated. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as 13. And now I get to put in whatever number I want. And if I select the input number thing, then the computer is smart and it won't actually input the number until I only select one option. That way it doesn't get confused and try and generate a number and input a number at the same time. So it'll be smart, it'll know that you're putting in two things and be like, alright, no, you can't do that. So, yeah. So, as soon as I undo the generate random number button, then the computer will start determining if the number I put in happens to be the number it generated. And if it is, I'll get a reward. If not, then that will turn off, and I'll fall into a pit. So, we're just waiting for the computer to determine, and I did not get the number correct. So I fall into a pit, and it's so horrible. In this case, I'm just having you fall into the room of the computer below, but if you wanted, you could have him fall into a lava pit or anything. I mean, it's a pit, you can put whatever you want in the bottom. But in this case, I just put it as nothing. Just harmless. So there we go. That was an example of a complete round of the game. So now I'm just going to unload the program from the computer. That should reset everything, including the pit. And I'm just going to turn it off. So to demonstrate what happens when I win, I'm going to cheat and look at the answer, which in this case is 6. It generated the number 6. So now I'm going to input the number 6, and just immediately go into inputting number. And I'm going to turn on the computer, and oh, wait, that actually won't work, because I first have to load the program. So I'm going to load the program onto the computer. That will turn on the light, showing the program's been loaded, And now I'm going to turn on the computer. Now I just wait for the computer to process. It's determining which command I've put in first right now, and it's determined that I've put in that command, so now it's going into game mode. And now it's determined that I want to input the number, so it's inputting the number, and it's seeing if I input the correct number right now. And it's still figuring out if I put in the correct number. It's in the final stage of figuring out if I put in the correct number. And now, since I put in the correct number, I'll get a reward. Yay, I get a diamond! And yeah, so there you go. That's the way the game works. Very simple. But, yeah, you know, this isn't exactly the most advanced Redstone computer. You can't expect something amazing to come out of it. Personally, I'm pretty happy with this. I think this game's actually somewhat fun for what it is. So there you go. That's the Redstone game that I've made. It's very simple, but I think it's pretty fun. And if you get it right, you get a diamond. So, I mean, you can't argue with that. If you're getting diamonds, then you're good, as far as I'm concerned. But, yeah. And, of course, the computer does all the error checking so that you can't screw things up. So it's a very intelligent program, considering. And, yeah. So, there you go, and I guess all that's left is to show you how on earth to program the Redstone computer to do this. Alright, I'm back, and I have just completely obliterated the entire program from the computer. So this way we can just start from complete scratch, and I'll show you how to program the computer to do this. So, first things first. If you're new to the series and you want to follow along, then you can either download the computer in the description and follow along from there, or you can build it on your own. And I have a series, Building a Minecraft Computer Tutorial, on my channel, which you can follow along in building this computer. And if you do the second option, the one where you actually build it yourself, you will also need to follow the How Do I series on how to build conditional branching and how to set up mathematical branching, because this program relies on that. So with that all out of the way, let's build the computer. So I'm going to go under the Programmers Only section, and I'm just going to get started. But before I get started, I would like to point out that there's a small issue that we'll come across if we don't do this. We will need to set these repeater delays here, this one, and this one. They'll all need to be set to 4. And this is just sort of a program thing, where this program relies on this command being slightly slower than normal. So we'll just need to set those 3 repeater delays, those 3 repeater delays to 4 ticks, and that will it'll just make our life a lot easier later when we actually use that command. So there we go. Now, let's go ahead and start programming this. So before we get started, I should bring up that this is a very, very big program. It takes up the entire program memory, save 2 commands. So yeah, this will take up some space. And in light of this, I'm going to do this in phases. The first phase is I'm going to set all of the general indicator command right here. I'm going to set them all to 1. And there's a couple of reasons for me doing this. First off, we are going to have a rather complex setup for the usage of the general indicator throughout the program, and it's going to be a lot easier just to break the torch where we don't need it than set it up where we do need it in the end, so that's why I'm going to set everything to 1. And the other reason is because it provides a very clear boundary between where all the logic of the program command is and where all the program command dealing with where we go to next and branching and all that provides a very clear barrier for that. And those are the 2 reasons. So next thing we want to do is we want to just set up the go-to system to go to every single command in order, because it's going to be a lot easier to sort of alter it to go to different commands when we need to, than go back and do every command individually. So I'm going to do that here. And I'm just going to count up in binary with 2 torches instead of 1. So that's 1, 2, 3. And the reason I need 2 torches instead of 1 is because one is in case we branch, and the other is if we don't branch. So 5 and 6. And now we need 7. And this will take a while to set all these up, but again, it's going to be worth it, because it will make our lives a lot easier later on. That was 8, now I'm doing 9, 10, 11, whoops, 11, and is that even over? No, that's not. 12, is this? Yeah, 12, 13, and 14, almost there, and command 15, and whoops, that's not good. Okay, so command 15, and finally, command 15, I'm just going to say, go to yourself. So there we go, we have the first sort of part of this set up. And there. Now we have more or less a program that's just going to turn the general indicator on every single command, and go to every command in order. Not exactly the most ideal thing, but it's going to make setting up this program a lot easier when we actually get to it. So now that we have that set up, I want to sort of rough out the logic that this program's going to go through, because it's going to make it a lot easier than just going through things in the dark. And besides, how are you really going to program a computer to do something if you don't really know how you're going to do it? So, let's start thinking of how we want to do this. So, let's start at the beginning. What's the very first thing I want the computer to do? Well, in my eyes, the very first thing I want the computer to do is determine what command we put in, and then just go wherever it needs to based on that. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to determine command. And this will take 2 commands. I'm just going to put a 2 there. And you won't really know in most cases how many commands something will take, but I'm just going to put it because, well, I've made this program and I happen to know. So I'm just making your life a little bit easier here. Now, that will, in theory, jump it to any part of the program that's required. So, in this case, it's either going to jump it to the random number generation phase, or the actual game phase, where you're inputting some number, and then you're determining if it's right or not. So, the first section I'm going to do is I'm just going to do random number generation. And our computer does not have a random number generator built in, so this will be a software random number generator. So I'll just put here, generate random number. And our random number generator takes 6 commands. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now right here, this is where we're going to do our next part. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to put this as our game loop. We're going to either, if the player has put in the input number command, we're going to input the number and determine it. Otherwise, we're just going to keep waiting for them to put in the command. That's how my game loop's going to work. So I'm just going to put game loop, because every game has a game loop pretty much. And this takes, not a screenshot, but it takes 2 commands. So, now the next phase is after we break out of the game loop, then what we're doing is we're determining if the player put in the correct number. So the game loop's going to be where we're waiting for the player to input some command, and here's where we're going to say, okay, the player input command 2, they want us to actually test what number they've put in. So here we're just going to test input number. I need this on 2 lines, and this also happens to be 2 commands. And lastly, but not leastly, we need to either, if they get it right, we need to do something, but if they get it wrong, do something. So I'm going to put this here as the correct command, and this here as the incorrect command. And I actually may end up inverting these depending on how we do the test input number. But for now, I'm just going to label them like this, and I'll change them later if I need to. I think this is actually going to work out. So there we go, we have everything set up. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to set up my read-only memory for this program. And in this case, my read-only memory is just going to be the command for if we get the command for generating a random number, and the command for if we generate, not a random number, but if we, what's it called? If we're inputting a number. There we go. I'll get there eventually. So there. We now have pretty much the whole thing sort of etched out, not into sort of sections that are a little bit easier to manage. Now we just really need to program it in. So, let's go ahead and do that. So, I'm going to start at the beginning, and I'm going to do the determine command. Determine which command they input. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to take a sort of shortcut, and I'm just going to only test if they put in the generate random number command. Because since I'm going to, in the game loop, need to test if they put in the input number command anyways, then I can just say, okay, jump there, and I'll do the test there. It's just a way of reusing code. So, that's how I'm going to do this. Now, I'm going to need to do this in two phases. The first phase is I'm just going to need to load command into ALU, and this can be, and then just load saved command. Actually, just I'll load inputted command, whatever command they input. So load input command into ALU and branch if needed. So this is essentially going to do the exact same thing as my password locking thing in my last video. So we're going to have to load the proper command into memory, so that will require read-only memory. So I'm going to go to read-only memory. I'm going to want number 3, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, I'm going to want number 2. ROM 2. Yes, so I'm going to want number 2, and this is going to determine... Oh, this is going to be the command for if they generate a random number or not. If we're getting that command, we're going to generate a random number. Otherwise, we're just going to go to the game loop. So this will be right there. That will give us command number 2. And now we're reading this. And we're going to want to save it into the ALU, so send RAM into ALU. And I'll just send it as input A. It doesn't really particularly matter in this case, but I'm just going to send it as input A. So that's our very first command done. So, now that I've done that, I'm going to need to do the exact same thing, except for the user input. And this is going to be the command. I'm going to again want to send that as ALU input, and this time I'm going to want it as input B. So now I've got all that in, and I'm going to need to branch. In order to branch, I'm going to need to determine if they've put in the same number, and the way I'm going to do this is again the same way I did the password test. I'm going to subtract them, and if it's 0, then obviously they put in the exact same number, because any number minus itself is 0. So, I'm going to put in 0, or I'm going to put in subtract. And if it's 0, I'm going to branch. If not, I'm not going to branch. So now I need to actually do branching here. So it's command 8 for the game loop, and command 3 for the generate random number. So if they're, I'm going to actually load this command, and if we're branching, which in this case we're not, we should, if we're not branching, then that means that they've done 1 minus 1, which is 0, which means if I input command 1, I just want to generate the random number. So I'm just going to move on to the next one in that case, and that will be command 2, because it's 0, 1, 2. So in that case, I don't need to do anything. But in the case that I have not, or excuse me, in the case that's not command 1 that I input, then I just want to jump to the game loop, because I'm taking a sort of shortcut there. And in the game loop, I'm going to determine if they've put in command 2 or not. But I'm just going to take a shortcut for now. So the way I'm going to do this is I just need to tell them to go to command 8, because that's when the game loop begins. So right now I'm at command 2, break this one, and that's the wrong torch. If I break this one, I should go to 0. Now if I put this one, will that take me command 8? Yes, it will. So if I'm branching, I'll go to command 8, and if I'm not branching, I'll go to command 2. So branching for this command is all set up. And there we go. We've completed the first part of this system. So I'm actually going to cut off the video here because this is going to be a somewhat large program, and I don't want to end up making this giant 1-hour video. I'm going to break it up into sort of smaller segments. So this could be sort of making the Redstone game video 1, so to speak. And in the next video, we'll continue and probably finish setting up the program. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Hello everyone, I'm back, and I've thought about it, and I decided that I'm just going to do everything in one big video. And just let me know in the comments if you prefer this big video style, or if you'd rather have things that are really long broken up into smaller segments. So that way I know whether I'm doing something right or whether not to do this in the future. But anyways, let's continue. So, I actually was looking at this, and I realized that I've done the branching backwards. The 8 should actually be on this one, and the 2 should be on this one, if I'm not mistaken. So now if I branch, it should go to 2, and if I don't branch, it should go to 8. Alright, excellent. So now we have a choice as to what we can do next. We can either build the random number generator, or we can build the game loop. The way I think of it, the random number generator is a little bit complicated, so I'm just going to go ahead and do the game loop first. Because the game loop's easy, and it's the same type of stuff we're already doing, so, I think it makes sense to just go ahead and do the game loop. So, with that out of the way, let's begin. Now, how are we going to do the game loop? Well, if you think about it, the only thing you really need to do in the game loop is you need to check if they've decided to do the input command. If they've done the input command, then you need to check if they have the right thing. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to load input command. And then I'm going to load whatever, actually I'm going to load whatever they put in first, but I can just put that there, and then I just put load correct input command. So exact same principle as before. So let's go over here, and first thing I want to do is I want to load read-only memory into the ALU. The game loop begins here, and this is the read-only memory command, so if I just go over here, then that should be getting me read-only memory. So that's the correct one for the user input. And for the next one, I also need to do that, so I might as well. And the one I need will be number 3. So I'll just put 2 torches there. And there. So I'm going to put a block here so I can find it easier when I go back. Now I'm looking for SynRamp to ALU input. And I'll just go back. And SynRamp to ALU input on both of these. And I can choose to put either A or B on both of them. It just doesn't matter as long as I don't repeat it. So I'm just going to put them because it doesn't matter. And lastly, I need to do subtraction, which is this command right here. ALU subtract, and there. This should be the game loop, as long as I have that command. I'm pretty sure I remembered it. Yeah, I did. Okay, so that should be everything. Now we just need to quickly test it and do branching. So I'm just going to go over to my input panel. I'm going to put in the number 2, because that should be the correct command. So, if I go over here, and I load, then that should have loaded the input command, whatever input, into memory. And it did. So now if I go and do the second one, that should load the other one and perform subtraction and therefore branching. And it looks like it is. And it's branching because I've put in this correct command. That's good. So, now that I have in the correct command, I just need to determine what commands I want to go to. So let's start here. First off, I can tell from this that this right here is command number 9. So, if I am branching, then I want to go to command 10. So that's actually correct. But if I'm not branching, then I want to go to command 9. So I'm just going to break that temporarily, and I'm going to see if I can get to command 9. So I'll just see what this one does. That's the wrong one, okay. So I'll just break this one then, and put it here. And that should give me command 9. And if I do branch, meaning I got it correct, then I go to command 10. Except actually, it should not be command 9, it should be command 8, because I want to go to the beginning of the loop. Command 9 would just take me back to the same place. So command 8, if I get it wrong, or if I don't have that in, and command 10, if I do have it in. So it makes sense. As long as I haven't put in the input command, they're just going to stay in the game loop, and as soon as I put in the input command, they're going to go on to test a number. So that's great. Now, I think we should go ahead and implement testing the number. So, as it turns out, testing the number is done exactly the same way. We will just need to load the number they put in, so just load number, and then we'll need to load whatever the correct number that the computer generated and test if they're the same. There's only going to be one minor difference between the two, but more or less is the exact same thing we've been doing the whole time. So I'll go ahead and put the ALU subtract there, and I'll do the read. I want to read number 1, and there we go. That should be just about everything, except in both cases I need to send to the ALU, and I will need to send to number A and B. Doesn't really matter, because as long as it doesn't equal 0, I'm not going to branch, so I can put it in any order I want. So, the thing we're going to have to do different here is we are going to need to actually load it from random access memory, because the computer is going to generate this number, so it obviously can't be read-only, because the computer is going to have to write whatever the number it wants at some point or another. So I'm actually going to need RAM, and that means I'm going to need the reading command right here. And I'm just going to store it at number 0 when I do the random number generation, so I can actually just do that and it's going to be okay. And believe it or not, that should be just about everything for this command. So if I go ahead and test it really quick, if I load from number 3, that should be getting me whatever I'm putting into that input panel. Which right now I have no idea what I'm putting in. What am I putting in? Oh, nothing. I'm just going to put in 5, just to put something in. And now that should be going down here, which it is. Should be going into the ALU as some number, which it is. Okay. So now we're going to test to see if we can actually load RAM. So if I go here and try loading RAM, it should be loading some number from RAM, because it's garbage number. It doesn't actually mean anything, but it should be loading some number nonetheless. And it is. It's loading some number. In this case, it happens to be loading a 6. Now it should be subtracting them, which it's getting -1, which is correct. And then it should be it should be going into the branching command and saying, no, you can't branch. And that's exactly what is happening. So great, this whole thing is working perfectly. Now all that's left to do is set up branching. So right now, we're in the case where, okay, they got it wrong, you want to go to the incorrect command. So the incorrect command should be this one right here. Because if we're not branching, well, then they got it wrong. So the one that's incorrect should be number, I believe it should be number 11? Yes, actually it is number 11. Okay. So I just need a torch somewhere. And it's not there. Okay. So just need a torch there. And that'll give me number 11 if we get it wrong. And if we get it right, we're just going to go to number 10. Perfect. And we'll just set up whatever we want there when we get to it. So perfect. We have successfully set up a system for reading in commands and branching based on those. And then we have a system for testing if they've put in the correct number. And from there, we can go to the input command, or excuse me, the correct command or the incorrect command. Excellent. So, since these are simple enough, I'm just going to go ahead and set these up. These are actually very, very easy. The way I have it set up is I have a machine in expansion slot 2, which does either something if we win or does something if we lose. And the way we're going to determine if we're winning or we're losing is we are going to, what's it called? We're going to go to, go on, my brain's thinking here. Okay, the way we're going to do this, we're going to either load, okay, since we have 1 and 2 as our things in read-only memory, I just have those as the output commands that are going to do something in the expansion machine. So that way I can just load one of those depending on if I win or if I lose. And then whichever wire gets lit up is the one that gets whatever I want done. So here, I'm going to start on if I get it correct. If I get it correct, I'm going to want the correct command, which I believe will be in binary number 1. Yes, it will be number 1 in binary. So I'm going to want to, first off, read from RAM, or excuse me, read from read-only memory. And which one am I going to want? Well, in any case at all, I'm going to need that section. And I believe number 1 is actually right here. I'm going to check. Yes, I believe number 1 is... Yeah, that's right, okay. Okay. So, there we go, that should be working. At least it should. If I... Am I actually in the wrong place? Oh no, I'm just looking at the wrong command. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Now we need to send it along the bus. I'll just send it as input A. Wait, no, I'm not going to send it to ALU. I need to send it to the expansion slot. What am I talking about? Excuse me about that. Okay, so now I need to send to an expansion slot. And... yeah, there we go. That should be just about everything for that command. Now for the other one, I want to do the exact same thing, except instead I'm going to load number 2, because number 2 means we lose, number 1 means we win. That's the way I have the machine set up. And yeah. So there, we've done everything in this entire game except for the random number generator. So the random number generator is probably going to be the hard part. But it's not going to be all that bad. So, generating a random number. How are we going to do this? Well, here's the way I have it set up. Again, it's not truly random, it's something called a hash, because it will give the exact same result every time. But here, nonetheless, is the way I'm going to do it. Now, you may have noticed that if I do 1 minus something, I get some really, really big number. And that's because it's a negative number, but I'm not keeping track of the sign bit, so it just looks like a really, really big number. So I can actually take advantage of that, because I can just do 1 minus something, that'll instantly get me some really big number. And if I take that really big number and do 1 minus that, then I again get a really, really big number. So, what I can essentially do is just 1 minus things over and over and over, and eventually, if I just have some set point of stopping, I should, in theory, have some random number generated. Again, not truly random, but it'll be unpredictable because we'll have an extremely large number of overflows, which essentially means going beyond the number, or creating a number that's bigger than the number of bits I can handle. So it will be random in the sense that we won't know what it is, and that's what's really important. So first off, I'm going to put in some seed. Oh, I already have a seed in, just for when we test. And now I'm going to set this up. So first thing I have to do is I have to load 1 into ALU. So just load 1 as input A. And it's important as it's input A, or else we won't get the excuse me, or else we won't get the overflow system. So then, after we load that, we're going to have to load seed as input B. So, there we have A and B, and now we're going to have to do subtraction on them. But I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to do something called perform iterated subtraction. And I'm actually going to do a number of iterations based on the length of the clock cycle. It'll be a little bit weird, but you'll see what I mean when we get to it. I'm going to do that twice. Just because, why not? It makes it that much less predictable. So perform iterated subtraction, and that'll give us the random number that we're looking for, which again is technically a hash, but you know, for our purposes, it's a random number. The only thing left to do, though, is we need to check to make sure that the random number generated is not 1. And you might be wondering, well, why would I have to check if it's 1 or not? And the reason for that is, if we get 1, then that means the seed was 0. And, well, I don't want the layer to be able to put in a seed of 0, because that will always generate 1, and that's too predictable in my opinion. So I'm just going to make sure that this generator never ever generates the number 1. The way I'm going to do this is, first off, I already have 1 loaded as input A, so I'm just going to load as input B. So I'm going to load random number as input B and branch. And we're going to branch if it's 0. Otherwise, and the way we're going to branch is we're just going to go back to the start of generating a random number, so command 2, and if not, we're going to go to command 8. And I actually have one blank command. I don't think I actually forgot something. I think I actually, for some reason, reloaded number 1 here, but it's okay. I'm all for saving commands if we have the option to. So, let's go ahead and start implementing this. First we have to load number 1 as input A. That requires reading read-only memory, and I want number 1, which will be here. Going to have to send as ALU input, or send to the ALU bus. It doesn't really matter. Actually, it does matter in this case. It needs to be input A, which is this one. And as input B, I'm again going to load read-only memory, and this time I want number B, which is, excuse me, I want the seed, which would be right here, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's right. That's where the seed would be located. And there. So next thing I need to do is, once I have this loaded, I need to perform subtraction, and I want to save that into read-only memory. So just gonna do write command right here. Not gonna do any actual selecting any location, just gonna save it to the very first one, which is number 0. And there. So now after that, we want to perform iterated subtraction. Now, like I said, this is going to be a little bit interesting. So the way I'm going to do this is, first I'm going to load the RAM, load the memory, and it's going to be the same thing, so I'm going to do it both times. I am going to do subtraction, which I believe is right here. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to do subtraction, because, again, iterated subtraction kind of implies you're going to need subtraction. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to use the send ALU output as ALU input command. And this way it will just perform subtraction as fast as it possibly can. Because we're immediately sending whatever we get from subtraction back as some input. And I'm just going to save it as input B, which I believe is right here. Input B, correct. Okay. So we have input B in. And therefore, what's going to be happening is it's just going to be loading. It's going to be loading that number from memory at the start, and then it actually I don't need to read read-only memory. Just yet. I'll need to be writing, not reading. Yes, I want to be writing whatever I have into memory, which will be right here. And there. Okay, so the way this is going to work is I'm going to be saving whatever number I get from the initial seed subtraction here, and then I'm going to start iterative subtraction. So that's going to load this, it's going to go through the bus, it's going to go into the ALU, it's going to subtract, it's going to send it back in, it's going to subtract, back in, subtract, as fast as it possibly can for 2 cycles. And then, all the while it's going to be saving whatever I get as into RAM, and then whatever I get as a result of that, that's going to be my randomly generated number. If I want to make this a little bit more interesting, on the second iteration I could do addition instead of subtraction, but I'm just going to keep doing subtraction because subtraction's fun. So there we go. Now the only thing left to do is we need to make sure that we don't get a 1. So, and in fact this will be the very last command in the entire system. So after this we can have the glory of testing. So, I'm going to get number 1. How am I going to test this? Well, I already have that saved as that, so I need to... So the only thing I need to do is I need to load the seed into memory. Whatever I have as my final seed, that needs to be saved as an ALU input. And the reason I'm going to explicitly reload it is because I can't guarantee that they're going to essentially be exactly the same thing saved into memory as saved into the register. So just to be absolutely sure, I'm going to load it. Gonna read, I need to save it into ALU, so I'm going to need to do the busing thing, not this one, but the bus. I need to load the bus as ALU input. I want as input B. I'm just going to perform subtraction yet again, and if it's 0, then I need to branch. Otherwise, I'm going to stay in exactly the same place. And otherwise I'm going to go to command 8, which is a game loop. So here I'm going to just quickly test this, and I shouldn't be branching right now. So if I'm not branching, then I'm going to want to go to command 8. Not 7, but 8. Which would be this one. Okay. And... whoops. This, if I can not keep breaking this... Wow. Okay. This may have completely screwed everything up, but oh well. Actually, it didn't. Okay, so I should be on command 8 if I can, without destroying the wire. So, there. Command 8. There we go. Now, if I do branch, I want to go to command 2. So right here, I believe, would be command 2. Because if I branch, that means I have 1, and I don't want to have my whatever I generate as 1. So there. And there now, I have successfully created a basic random number generator. If I branch, if I don't branch, I'm gonna just go to the game loop, which is command 8. Not 15. Wait, how did I get 15? Wow. I must be tired or something. So if I'm not branching, I want to go to command 8. And if I do branch, I want to go to command 2, because that means I got 1. Okay. So that's working. And I guess the only thing left to do is the general indicator. And then we can finally test. So I'm just going to break every other one for a bit, because that will provide us a little on-off system. And I'm going to stop when I get to the game loop. The game loop, I'm just going to stay straight on. And I'm only going to break it again on the incorrect command, because that's the only other time I want it to be off. And there, that will simulate all the effects we had on the general indicator, for surprisingly obvious reasons. So this should, if I did everything correctly, which we pretty much know I didn't, but it should have created the game. So the only thing left to do is just test everything we created and make sure it's working exactly as I demonstrated. So let's go ahead and test. First off, I'm going to load the program. We're just going to turn that on. Good. And now I'm going to turn on the computer. And I have on number 1, so I should be going... Okay. That's interesting. So I'm not really sure where I ended up, but I don't think it's in where I was supposed to. So I'm going to load the program again. Okay. There. I'm just going to hope that was a system error and not an issue with my program. And it looks like I just forgot to unload the program last time, so I got, yeah. So now it's generating a random number in theory. It's all doing iterated subtraction. And this should be flashing on and off, which it is. And now it's going to test if it's gotten 1. And it oh wait, I think that's actually the next command. And now it's testing if it's gotten 1. And it shouldn't have, so it should be going to here. So there we go, now it should be in the game loop. And it should be doing absolutely nothing until I hit command number 2. So there. Excellent. So now we have just about everything. Yeah, okay. So we've generated some random number. I'm just going to guess it's 5, which I know is going to be wrong. I'm going to go ahead and hit the branching command. Or the command for inputting the correct number, according to the program. Then I should be now be going into here, testing it, and pretty much guaranteed getting it incorrect. Because I mean, it's a 1 in 15 chance, 1 in 14 chance, I actually think. Yep, incorrect. I should be falling into the pit of doom. And what? Oh. Oh. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to turn this on to reset the computer. And now I'm going to show you where I screwed up. On these commands, I shouldn't be going to whatever the next command is. I should be going to whatever this command is. So, yeah, I should not be going to the next command. So this says go to 11. This says go to 12. Oh, 14. This says go to 13. This says go to 14. This says go to 15. That's not what I want. I want this to say, hey, go to 12, because this is command 12. So I'm just going to break these torches and do like this. And that should provide the desired effect. So I'm just going to try one more time and hopefully get it wrong again. And I'm getting diamonds spit out. I don't think that's supposed to be happening, but I'll figure out what I did wrong when I come across it. So I'm just going to run the program like this. So it's testing if I input command 1. It's saying, okay, he did not put in command 1. And now it should be jumping over to the game loop. Now it should be testing if I put in command 2. It should say, okay, he did put in command 2. So now it should be testing if the numbers match up. And they should, in theory, be matching up. Or not be matching up. So now I should be going to the incorrect command, which should drop me into a pit and not give me any diamonds. Excellent. And it should just stay like this until I unload the program, which should reset everything. Excellent. So I've reset everything, and now I can just test getting the number right. So what random number did I generate? Apparently I generated a 4. A 4 is what I generated. So if I just undo this 1, and load the program one final time, and hit run, then this time I should be getting a diamond. I should be getting this turning on and off as it's loading. So now it's testing my command. Now it should be loading everything in. It's loading this, it's testing if that's correct. And if it is, I should get a diamond. Although, there we go. I get a diamond because I get it correct. Hooray! So there, that's the entire program. And just to clarify, the reason I have these delays right here is because if I did not have these delays here, I would still be having things clearing out of the bus while I was sending the information to the program. And I don't really want to send the information to whatever's in my expansion slot until the buses have the information I want in them. And that's the reason I have these delays. It's just synchronization issues. So there, excellent. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you are enjoying your basic Redstone game if you followed along. And yeah, so thank you, and I'll see you